Our first video from Chapter 6, Section 3 talks about what a parametric curve is, or a parametric equation. This is going to be something that's very, very different for you. Instead of having two variables, y in terms of x, now we have three. We have two equations. One is x in terms of another variable, maybe t, and then the second equation is y, also in terms of t. So we can use this a lot for applications where we want to model both vertical and horizontal changes when time is progressing. And so we'll look at examples of that on our second page. So our first example, just want to run through a typical parametric equation sort of problem. Let's say that our equation was written like this. X is going to equal 3 times t, y is going to equal t squared minus 2. And we're going to be graphing right on this coordinate plane here, but we're going to base it on some different intervals. And so we don't do many questions like this, but sometimes the best option is to make a little t-chart and just get a variety of points. So for this first chunk, what I might do, let me scroll up here a second. Okay, if I make a t-chart, okay, and actually it's going to be a double t-chart because I'm going to have values for t and for x and for y. So if you look at part A, they're asking what happens when t is between -3 and +1. So I'm going to put in -3, -2, -1, 0, and 1. And then I need to evaluate what x and what y are at those different times. So we'll just deal with x first. Since x is 3 times t, this would be 3 times a -3 is -9, then -6, then a -3, then 0, then +3. Okay, so that's the first chunk there. And then I do the same thing for y, and y is t squared minus 2. So if I were to square the -3 of t, that gets me 9. 9 minus 2 is 7. Okay, do the same thing with -2. I get 4 minus 2, which is 2. Then I'd get 1 minus 2 is -1, then a -2, and then for when t is 1, I'd also get -1. Okay, so you can see that we plug things in several times, but now when I graph, I'm just going to graph x and y like I normally do. So we kind of scroll over, and we're going to graph something at -9, 7. Let's see how this works on an iPad. So there's a point right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. So -9, 7, -6, 2. We're going to have -1, let's see, sorry, -3, -1. Then 0, -2, and 3, -1. And so if we connected, you see we're getting what looks to be a parabola, part of a parabola. Okay, now part B says do the same thing, but now only look from t values between -2 and 3. So I need to go back and I need to add a couple t values to my chart. Okay, I'm just going to add 2 and 3. So if I plug a 2 in for x, I would get a +6, and then a 3, I get +9. If I plug that into the y equation, if I plug a 2 into the y equation, I would get +2, yep, and +7. Okay, so that's my chart there. So let's go over and do the same thing, but now again we're only looking for the values from -2 to 3. I'm going to do this in a different color here. Let's do this one in red. So at -2, when t is -2, we know that we have that -6. Oops. Should be red here. Come on. There we go. See if that works. Oh, technology. Maybe I have to do it on the iPad a second. There we go. Okay, so we have that point there. We would also have this point. We would have this point. And we would have this point. And our friend is back. I know. I'm horrible, still haven't registered this, but still giving it a shot, and I don't know what my overall computer is setup's gonna be like. There we go. Okay, so we need to go back and quickly add in those points again. -6, 2, and -3, -1. Right there. Okay, so this was what we had the first time through. And doing this in red, we had that point, that point, that point, that point. And then we would also go up to 6, 2 now, and 9, 7, so somewhere up there. Okay, so this part of the graph would look like that. So notice the difference between red and blue, and then the last part would be from -3 for t values from -3 all the way to +3, and so that's basically doing the entire chart. So then if we did that, we would have the entire parabola there. Okay, so that green one was off by a bit, but you guys get the idea, hopefully, that we can now graph different parts of these equations based on what the third variable constraints are. And it's just going to limit what x and y values we look at. Okay, that's enough for the first video here. I'm going to stop this, and we'll move on here in a little bit.